So I'm out here checking on Gilligan's Island. It's November 4th. My apologies for the neighborhood noise. Don't know what that is. I'm going to check on the little mini pumpkin I put in here and see whether they are getting into it. I actually put it in before Halloween or on Halloween because it was already going mushy. Oh, we've got worms on the burlap. Oh, and I gave Gilligan a whole bunch of worms that I baited out of my tower systems yesterday. So I put a big pile of worms right next to the pumpkin. So you can see the remnants of the pile. There was obviously some castings with the pile. And I don't see... Yeah, so these are just the castings that were with the bait cup. The worms obviously got into the burlap. That's the first time I've really seen them in the burlap layers like that. And they're going all the way through to the corrugated cardboard I have on top. This burlap, it is possible for them to go through the open weave of the burlap. It's tight, but they wiggle through. Sometimes more active than others. Maybe I'll use my little fork and see whether they've discovered this little pumpkin yet. I'm not actually seeing worms in, well, I don't know if they're not in it because the pumpkin is pretty darn soft. But I don't actually see them. They're all around. Certainly a lot of worms in Gilligan now. I think I've got the population where I want it to be. But there's a piece of manure. So there's a piece of horse manure that I would have said is too dry for the worms. Like, when I fork it, it's still a big, large clump of manure, but the worms are in it. So they obviously can get in and out of the manure just with minimal moisture level. I was worried about the moisture in Gilligan, but I'm worried about it in both directions, too wet and too dry. But I think I'm just going to have to, deal with whatever happens in the spring. If it's a muddy mess, we dump a muddy mess onto the garden. If it's too dry, then obviously the material won't all be processed, which I guess I will get a hint of that. I'll put that big clump of manure in there, and maybe I'll put the pumpkin on top of it because pumpkins are very moist. So that'll achieve two birds with one stone there. Obviously, I've been putting extra bedding in here, and I filled the surroundings with my prepared bedding. So I kind of made a moat around Gilligan with my prepared bedding. That I do see worm activity in it. So even though it didn't have manure or anything in it, it was very old prepared bedding. It had been going for about 4 months. I don't see a lot of worms actually. I do see cocoons in it though. Well, you can see the cocoon way over here, right at the tip of my fork. I guess there's a worm. There are worms in the prepared bedding, but not nearly as many as in Gilligan. Main body here, where there is obviously there's a cocoon just about ready to hatch right here. Orange. So underneath here, This is where I've got my composting apples. This is what I'm using to give Gilligan a little bit of gentle compost heat through the winter outdoors. So there are apples buried here, and obviously the worms are into them, so they can't be that hot. You know, my thermometer, I've misplaced the batteries case to it, so I can't charge it. So when I get that fixed, I'll take a reading on this bedding. It is definitely warmer than the outside temperature. Lots of cocoons. I do want to reiterate that I feel the hanging basket liners are very conducive to the worms laying cocoons. I think they like the scratchiness of the fibers in these old coconut or hemp hanging basket liners. I also have been putting leaves in here. I put a big pile of outdoor leaves which have been mixed up with the hanging basket liner there, and you can see kind of a mixture of worm castings, leaves, and the fibers still from the hanging basket liners. My hope is by spring, it's November 4th, when I put this onto our garden, those hanging basket liners will be gone, because I can really see if I put this onto our garden with a bunch of these hanging basket fibers. There's another one that's less processed with a cocoon in it though. I can see cocoons everywhere. If I really feel if I put it in its current state into my garden, I would just always be snagging it with our hands and with our hand tools. I don't think the seeds or the garden would mind one little bit. It's simply for our purposes, I think it would make it gardening a little bit more difficult. So I'm just doing some gentle mixing here with the mixing up, trying to equalize some of the bedding and the moisture, because like I said, I put the cardboard down the side. That felt like plastic, looked like plastic, actually is just a large maple leaf that kind of had a crunch like plastic initially, even though it's damp. Anyway, I'll get these worms tucked up. Oh, maybe I'll quickly check the other side. Let me just back up my scooter here. Let me just tuck up. So those worms have all decided to, oops, sorry guys, there you go. I just leave the cardboard in a big jumble mess up there. I figure the worms probably appreciate the layers. Well, I know they appreciate the layers of cardboard. They seem to really get into it when they're stacked. So this side is where I put my original apples. Micah and I buried more apples in here. So I've got an egg carton with kind of apple slop in the middle of it, and I had some apples buried right here. And you know, I can feel, just because my hand is close to the bedding here, I can feel gentle warmth. So the composting feature is definitely working. Let's look in this egg carton, see if the worms are into that. Trying to pull it out. Now I can see some solid, I see my grit, I see the, I still see the apple there, and I don't see a lot of worms into it. So it might still be going through a little bit of a compost cycle. Oh, Oh, I guess there is one worm in it. I see one worm in it, which means the temperature must be okay. Anyway, it was a whole egg carton with grit and like, you know, like a pureed rotten apple mixture with some worm casting, a little handful of worm castings to get the action going, and some shredded cardboard and some grit. So yeah, so Gilligan is doing just fine. Like I said, new bedding around the moat. The worms seem to be, I think the population is about right now. I've probably put, my guess would be 2 or 3 pounds of worms in here. And, you know, which is pretty incredible considering I started with, oh, there's an avocado trying to grow, I think. I started with less than a pound of worms in late February this year, and I've got 2 worm towers, 4 bins each, in full production now, and Cinderella inside with plenty of worms in her, and Gilligan, and I've been slowly baiting out worms and adding them to Gilligan, and this one's doing great. The worms have definitely outdone themselves multiplying. So yeah, I just leave the cardboard like that. I can also tell that even though we have holes in the roof of Gilligan, it's under our overhang here enough that it's not getting enough rain on it to make a big difference to the cardboard. That's kind of my monitor, is water coming through from the outside. If that cardboard is soaking wet at any point, I will put another piece of cardboard on top, which I'll probably do anyway, to just keep a track on whether the roof is, the holes in the roof, which we tried to angle so the rainfall wouldn't come in. But if, you know, we do get a driving rain or snow or whatever lands on it, we might get dripping through. So I'm just going to watch that because I don't want Gilligan to end up being a puddle. Anyway, that's our check-in for today. And I hope Micah will watch this and see the worms getting into the apples that we added. Bye for now.